Chapter 11, Sunrise and Sunset. Ronduin tucked the golden chicken into the turnip basket and closed the top basket. Then he reached out toward Sir Andrew, who carefully placed the red hen in his hands. "It's okay, little bird," said Ronduin softly, as he tucked the red chicken under his arm and stroked her head. "I'm going to put you in with your friend now, and soon I will take you to your new home." Ronduin tucked the red hen into the double basket next to the golden hen and pulled a string out of his pocket and tied the handles together. At that moment, the door squeaked open at the top of the stairs, and 6 people, each carrying a bag loaded with vegetables, hurried down the stone stairs. Ronduin moved the chicken baskets to the step behind him so there would be space on the stairs for people to pass. Then he grabbed the stern of the boat while Sir Andrew stepped out to make space for 3 people to move into the forward part of the boat. Next, Sir Andrew stepped into the middle of the boat and sat next to the oarlocks. He was followed by 3 more people who sat in the wide end of the boat. The last person in line was Ricard, Mirabelle's father. He hugged the blue wool bag of vegetables close to his chest. Just at that moment, Ronduin heard a booming voice at the top of the stairs.
"We will leave these bags on the steps," he said. "They can take whatever fits in each boatload."
The king and a helper each carried 2 big grain bags down the steps and placed them behind the chicken baskets.
"Did you catch both hens?"
asked Ronduin's father. "We did, and they are in these baskets," said Ronduin.
"After the boat leaves, I'll help you carry them to the balcony,"
said his father. Speaking to Sir Andrew, the king asked,
"How many grain bags do you think you can carry?"
"At least 2, said Sir Andrew. Ronduin steadied the boat, and the king passed a heavy bag to Ricard, who passed it to Sir Andrew, who passed it to someone who nestled it in the bow of the boat. The second bag was passed along the same way. Ronduin smiled as he thought of the village people eating bowls of porridge made from the grain in these bags. Ronduin noticed that now the boat sat much deeper in the water than it had when it arrived. "I think the boat is full enough," said Ronduin to his father.
"I agree,"
said the king.
"We will keep a lookout for you coming back," said the king to Sir Andrew. "And safe journey to all of you,"
he said to the villagers in the green boat. "Thank you," said Ricard to the king, "for sending us home to our families." Sir Andrew nodded at Ronduin, who let go of the boat. Ronduin watched as he pulled the boat full of workers and bags of vegetables and bags of grain out into the open doorway and onto the wide expanse of water. Ronduin waved and Ricard waved back. The king's helper had gone back to work. Now, Ronduin and his father were alone. It was very quiet. Ronduin peeked into the chicken baskets and saw that the hens were sleeping. Ronduin and his father sat on the step together, watching the ripples the boat had left behind move across the water in the entryway of the castle.
"Strange times,"
said the king. Ronduin nodded and leaned his head onto his father's arm and took a deep breath. It is strange, he thought, to be sitting on a stone step in the castle with his father and 2 chickens, and to watch a boat go through the doorway and head out on what looked like a sea. But somehow it was good too. They sat quietly for some time, and then Ronduin's father reached into his pocket and took out something wrapped in cloth.
"Agnes thought we might want this,"
he said. Ronduin opened up the cloth, and when he saw 2 small meat pies, he realized that he was hungry. Ronduin and his father sat together and ate.
"You know," said his father, "it will be very quiet here when everyone has gone back to the village. The only people in the castle will be Agnes and you and your mother and me. And of course, Roland will be with the animals in the barn, but we can't get to him once the boat has gone to the village."
"But won't Sir Andrew bring the boat back?" asked Rondoin.
"Your mother and I and Sir Andrew decided he should stay in the village after taking the 3rd boatload tomorrow," said Rondoin's father. "Agnes says the water is deeper than it was during the last big flood, so it will take many, many days for the water to drain away. He can use the boat to get around in town for a while. Then the time of mud will begin."
Just then the chickens started clucking. "They must be hungry," said Rondoin. "I have a little pie left." Rondoin crushed his remaining pie crust into little crumbs. He opened the basket and placed the crumbs next to the hens, who ate them quickly. Rondoin's father reached into the basket and lifted the red chicken and tucked her under his arm. Rondoin did the same with the golden chicken.
"You know," said Rondoin's father, "since there are 2 of us, it would be easier to carry the hens like this than in the baskets."
"I think so too," said Rondoin, stroking the head of the golden chicken. The 3rd floor balcony had not been built for chickens, but it made for a good home for 2 hens, except for the fact that there were no worms to be found. It was just a bit bigger than Rondoin's bed. One end of the balcony had a roof, and the other end was open to the sky. His father had said that the roof would be fixed by the end of the day, and that, on the morrow, Sir Andrew would take the rest of the workers to their homes. His father had told him as well that he himself would meet Sir Andrew upon his return today, for he was eager to hear how people were doing in the village. He had said that Rondoin should spend the rest of the day getting the chickens settled in their new home. Rondoin put the 2 baskets on their sides and wedged them into the corner under the roof where they would stay dry in the rain. Then he went to the storeroom to get straw usually used for mattresses. He carried a big bag of it back to the balcony and put a few handfuls in each basket, and he strewed the rest over the floor. Next, he made a trip to the new kitchen, where Agnes gave him some oats and kitchen scraps. He brought these and a bowl of water to the hens. "Now I'm done," he said to himself, smiling. Rondoin sat cross-legged on the end of the balcony that was open to the sky. He sang a little song that came into his mind and into his voice as he sang it. 2 chickens, they flew into a boat, hey diddle-dee-dee, and to the castle they did float, hey, hey diddle-dee-day. No grass, no land did they espy, hey now diddle-dee-dum. Live on a balcony now did they, eat oats and bits of old pie. Rondoin sang this again and again until the sky turned pink, then reddish-orange. For just a few seconds, the color of the sky was almost a match for the color of the reddish hen. "I'll call you Sunset," Rondoin said to the red chicken, "and your name is Sunrise," said Rondoin to the golden chicken. Chapter 12. Goodbye to Sir Andrew. Looking out his bedroom window during the pre-dawn twilight, Rondoin delighted at the cloudless sky. He dressed quickly and, wearing his linen shirt, grabbed the small sack of oats and jug of water he had left by his door, and darted through the third-floor hallway to the balcony. Rondoin stepped out onto the balcony just as the first rays of sunlight lit the sky beyond the castle walls. The two hens were perched on top of their baskets. Rondoin emptied their water bowl over the railing. He heard the water from the bowl splash into the water below. Then he refilled the bowl from the jug. The hens watched him with what looked like curiosity, but when he poured the oats in their now empty dish, they fluttered across the balcony and began pecking at their breakfast. Just then, Sir Andrew opened the door and stepped out onto the straw-covered balcony.
"I see you've made a nice home for these two fine hens," he said. "I've stopped to say goodbye. I'll make a trip to the village this morning and another trip this afternoon for the workers finishing the roof."
As Sir Andrew said this, workers emerged onto the brightly lit roof across the courtyard. "What did you see in the village?" asked Rondoin.
"I was surprised to see 2 boats there already,"
said Sir Andrew.
"The Kingdom of the Hills sent them. They could see from the hilltop that our whole valley is flooded, and they thought the villagers might need food. They kindly sent many bags of grain, and they offered to take villagers back to the hills. A few families with no second floors went back with them."
"How is Ricard's family?" asked Rondoin.
"Their house is on a little hill at the edge of town," said Sir Andrew. "Theirs is one of 3 homes that sit on land higher than the floodwaters. In the village, people spoke with me from their 2nd-story windows because, like this castle, the 1st floor is flooded. When we got to Ricard's home, Mirabelle spotted us coming and ran down the little hill to meet us. We tied the boat to their goat yard fence. They invited me in for soup. I have to tell you, I was never so happy to have a warm bowl of soup."
Listening intently, Rondoin fidgeted with the hem of his linen shirt. He wished he had something he could send to Mirabelle.
"They kindly offered to let me stay with them when I returned to the village," continued Sir Andrew. "Ricard's family and the other 2 homes with no flooding have room for a few more people. They have asked that I bring the families with the littlest children."
Just then, the 2 hens both let out a loud cackle. They both stepped out of the same basket, tipping their heads to the left and right. In the straw-lined basket sat 2 eggs. Sir Andrew laughed.
"Looks like you've got breakfast,"
he said. "Actually," asked Rondoin, "could you take these eggs to Mirabelle and her family? I think they will be safe to travel in this small sack of oats." Rondoin opened the half-full bag and tucked the eggs deep into the center of the oats. He tied the top of the bag and handed it to Sir Andrew.
"I will carry this to Mirabelle's family with great care," he said.
Chapter 13. Wind Tickling the Water. "Sir Andrew said I'd find you here," said Rondoin's mother, stepping onto the balcony. "The chickens look happy. You've made them a nice home." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a handful of vegetable scraps and tossed them into the chickens' feed bowl. "Agnes always has scraps that you can bring to the chickens," she said. "Our meals will be in the new kitchen, since all the workers, except Agnes, will be back in the village by the end of the day." Rondoin smiled as the chickens found their way to the scraps and began pecking at them. "It's so funny that they like to eat the scraps that we wouldn't eat," said Rondoin. "This one is named Sunrise," he said, pointing to the golden bird, "and this one is called Sunset. Sir Andrew told me that they already laid eggs and that he's bringing them to Ricard's family," said his mother. "Yes, said Ronduin. "I wanted to send them something. They are kind to give Sir Andrew bed and board." The queen nodded. "We will miss Ricard, but I am glad he will be at home, helping his family and other families from the village. Now," she continued, "we have an important job for you. Your father will soon help Sir Andrew load the boat for the first trip of the day. Sir Andrew will be coming back later today for the people now working on the roof. After you come to the new kitchen for porridge, we need you to look out for Sir Andrew returning to the castle. The sitting room has the best view. Take some bread and cheese, as you will be there for a while. When you see the boat returning, I'm counting on you to tell the people working on the roof that the boat will arrive soon. They must work until the very last moment to finish the repairs. You will find the king with them, and he will want to meet Sir Andrew to learn more about how the people in the village are faring." "Yes, mother," said Ronduin. Ronduin sat on the floor, facing out the window of the sitting room. In the distance, he could hear the faint sounds of hammering on the roof. Something is strange, he thought, but he did not know what was different. Then, for a few moments, the hammering noise stopped. "I know what is strange," he thought. "The castle is quiet. Even with the hammering, the castle has become quieter because more than half of the workers have gone back to the village." Ronduin stood and scanned the unusual sea that lay before the castle. In the distance, he saw the forest that blocked the view of the village. Looking closer to the castle, he looked for the tops of small bushes that lined the road, but they could not be seen, for they were underwater. Across the area that should be recently planted fields, puffs of wind rustled up tiny patterns of waves that skidded across the water. "I like watching the wind tickling the water," thought Ronduin, smiling. Ronduin picked up his jump rope and remembered he had planned to figure out how to count by sixes. He wished he had a quill and ink to write with and parchment to write on. "Maybe I can find something that works as well as a quill and ink and parchment," thought Ronduin. He looked around the room, and his eyes settled on the fireplace, which, on this warm, sunny day, lacked a fire. Picking up a piece of charred wood, he looked at the stones that made up the sides of the fireplace. On the right side of the fireplace, a large, pale stone looked to be the perfect place to write. Ronduin made an X for each number at the end of each row of 5 X's. He inscribed a number, so it looked like X, 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 6, X, 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 12. He continued, 5 X's and then 18, 5 X's and then 24, 5 X's and then 30. 5 X's and then 36, 5 X's and then 42, 5 X's and then 48, 5 X's and then 54, 5 X's and then 60. Ronduin then read the numbers again and again until he learned them and could recite them without looking at the marks on the stone. Then he picked up his jump rope and jumped steadily, speaking the numbers from memory, all the while looking out the window. Ronduin again counted by sixes while jumping rope. He did this again and again until he was breathing hard. After a drink of water, he settled by the window, watching the area where he could usually see the road that came out of the forest. Sir Andrew and the boatful of villagers had approached the village via the same road through the forest that Ronduin had often traveled with Sir Andrew in the cart on the way to school. Only now the road had become a water passage through the trees. When Sir Andrew returned, he would emerge from the forest in an empty boat where the road parted the trees. Ronduin brought a piece of bread and a chunk of cheese to his lookout spot near the windows. He tossed his bread in the air and caught it. Now he tossed it higher, then higher still. He wondered if he could toss it so high that it touched the ceiling. The next time he threw it, he swung his arm with great force. The bread hit the ceiling. "Hurrah!" said Ronduin excitedly. But then as the bread plummeted to the floor in an unexpected location, Ronduin said, "Oh no!" He picked the bread up, dusted it off, and took a bite out of it. As he ate, he thought he would like to have something to throw that wasn't a part of his meal. As soon as he finished, he opened his mother's sewing box and found some small squares of red velvet. "Perfect," he said. Ronduin found a needle and thread and began sewing the squares together. His eyes were on his sewing, so he didn't see Sir Andrew as he emerged from the opening in the trees in the green boat. In fact, since the boat moved more quickly without passengers, Sir Andrew was almost halfway back to the castle when Ronduin finally noticed him. Ronduin was off in a flash. He dropped his sewing, sped out the door, darted around the scaffolding, past the chicken balcony, where he resisted taking a look, turned the corner to the next hallway, and began calling out as soon as he could see his father. "Father, father, the boat is almost here," he yelled.